A little bit different than gaming, but kind of in that same along the line.
Yeah, exactly. We're not really gambling anymore. Instead, we're going to play some arcade games at Dave & Buster's.
It's
right?
like gambling, except there's no real payout.
You get tokens
You get a
now
token.
and
So
stuffed
they can't
animals.
lose.
Doesn't do it for me.
Well, I still like it, but Dave & Buster's reports their earnings today after the market closes, and when you look at their chart, they're no stranger to big moves around those earnings. So, Megan, I'm wondering what your data at LikeFolio is telling you about Dave & Buster's.
So Dave & Buster's is a really fun one to track. We actually, we had to go in and customize some pretty unique purchase intent scoring words whenever we looked at Dave & Buster's because, it's more than dining, it's also entertainment. So we had to make sure that we captured mentions of people talking about playing games there, maybe they're watching games there, maybe they're eating and drinking there, going to parties, etc. And you can see this is a full year. This is a 365-day moving average of purchase intent that shows their pretty sustained growth and around 8%. And what's interesting is that their sentiment is near 83% as well, which, I guess that makes sense. You're going there to have fun. So in theory, you should be, or we would hope that people would be tweeting about having fun whenever they're going to play games and have some appetizers with friends and whatnot. I think that their growth is being driven primarily by new store openings. They opened about 15 last year, and they're opening about 15 more this year. And so that's something that we're watching moving forward.
Megan, the long-term chart on Dave & Buster's is all over the board. It's got some big peaks and valleys here. So that my question is this stock seasonal? Is it cyclical? What do you guys see in terms of how, this stock's got some big moves to it and then they fail, right? But it's all over the board. It's kind of a tough one to get figured out. What do you guys see in terms of any pattern in their movement?
I think that Evelyn was right whenever she talked about, they do tend to move big on earnings. I think they're anticipating around an 8% move. So, in general, Dave & Buster's is pretty seasonal as well. I guess people like to get out there typically in the late summer, and then again around the holiday season, it starts to amp up again. So I guess when people want to have fun. In general, this is a big quarter for them. Lingering in, typically Q4 and Q1 are big ones. Right now, moving into Q2, you start to see a little bit of a downturn. That's to be expected, though, and then they'll ramp up again at the end of summer. So yes, you're exactly right in the seasonal nature. I think it's interesting too. The stock is down about 16% since their end of quarter. So that could be, that could be a great place if they report a positive earnings.
When I was looking on Twitter today, I did see a bunch of people posting about having fun, Megan, just like you were saying, but also people are wondering how to play this name ahead of earnings. And our first tweet says, Dave & Buster's looks decent. They smash revenue on the regular, and they have this steak pasta, which is actually really good. And I can't talk to that steak pasta in particular. However, it does bring to focus the fact that they do offer so much to their customers. They have food, they have games, they kind of have a whole experience, right?
I want to have fun all the time, Megan, not just seasonal.
Oh,
I don't know why we've pegged this to some season where I can only have fun. I like to have fun all the time.
I think if we take this a little bit further and we start thinking about discretionary income as a whole, tying it into our gaming talk too, seeing that the mentions are hanging in there in a stock like Dave & Buster's and a company like Dave & Buster's, to me says that people are still going out and having fun. People are still spending their money for that kind of a thing, which is potentially, going even farther, good for the economy. But to tie this into its stock performance around gappiness, kind of around earnings, it's not a surprise to me. Dave & Buster's isn't one of the most liquid names. It's not, talked about all the time on financial media. Today alone, the stock sizzle index is 5.8. Basically saying volumes are 5.8 times higher. Call and put sizzle, or that's actually the options. I'm sorry. Options are trading 5.8 times more than they typically do. To me, this is one that is going to get a ton of activity around earnings, and after that, maybe it kind of just hangs out. Is that typical for what you see, Megan?
I think you're right. I think that I also like that you picked up on the whole experience aspect of Dave & Buster's and the fact that people are spending money there. We actually track these macro trends as well, and we're seeing a shift that people, especially the younger generation, that are the clientele of Dave & Buster's. You know, they increasingly value experiences and they want dining and entertainment in one. You know, they don't want to have to choose one or the other. So this is a nice fit right now.
That's interesting because I mean that kind of ties into like a Top Golf kind of comes to mind as somewhere you go, you eat, you kind of hang out, and it's an activity at the same time. Evelyn, is there anything else that you're seeing on Twitter that kind of reflects that as well, or?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, whenever you think about what kind of competitors are in this market, I think Top Golf is a great example of that. Another one is Main Event. I don't know if you have that around here, but from my hometown of Plano, Texas, Main Event is the place to go where you have bowlings, you have these arcade games. But then aside from Dave & Buster's around here, I think you would just get down to those smaller bowling alleys or just other sort of spaces like that. But this next tweet that says Dave & Buster's, everyone's looking for an experience nowadays. Has Dave & Buster's done that?
So that ties exactly into the conversation that we basically are just having here, Megan. When I'm looking at this though, I try to tie it into, it seems like we've kind of been steady as we go with consumer purchase intent mentions, but it's kind of been the same with the stock. Are you seeing much of a divergence there that makes you lean, one way or another going into this announcement?
In general, there's not an extreme divergence. You know, we kind of see that this is fairly online. I think that there could be something to the fact that the stock has dropped about 16% since the end of quarter. But we're not necessarily seeing a weakness in purchase intent. We're not seeing this extreme surge in purchase intent. So, not a typical divergence play like we sometimes like to capitalize on.
So, Megan, the last thing here. So, here's the vibe I'm getting from talking to all three of you about this. This is a birthday party place, or it's a Christmas party place, or it's some event, end of school party place, right? So, it looks like you don't just go hang at Dave & Buster's, right? It's some event that they drive to play games.
I gotta say, you are wrong, because Thursday nights, I guess they have this deal with wings or beer or in games. Thursday night, Twitter loves Dave & Buster's. So it's a day of the week kind of place, Kevin.
Well, and Megan, and one of the first things you said when we started talking about Dave & Buster's is this is a place that maybe people go to watch games.
Yes. Exactly.
And so when we're seeing, the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, the final just went to Game 7. We see an extension in the NBA playoffs, and sure, these are just, one-off events, but as the sports are kind of to wane down, I would assume that those are positives for a stock like Dave & Buster's around the country. More games, more reasons to go into those kind of places.
Yes, they're really trying to differentiate themselves and say, okay, you can watch a game here, and then while you're watching, you can also play games, during halftime or commercial breaks, and we can, have a beer and share some appetizers with your friends. So they kind of are hitting that trifecta of everything. And interestingly, too, their revenue is pretty diverse in terms of how they're pulling it in. They've got majority of their revenue, about 58%, from the games themselves, and then about a 29, 12, or 13 food and drink breakdown. So I think that the fact that helps them.